Councillors, officers, ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome at this evening's meeting. Please note this meeting is being filmed for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's website. If anyone present does not wish to have their image captured, they should make themselves known to the Democratic Services immediately. I would like to remind members that elements of the report relating to item 12 have been redacted in accordance with the law and statute. This committee is required to maintain compliance with those various laws and statutes which include, but are not limited to, data protection legislation. I would therefore request that members do not discuss redacted matters in public session. I also urge officers and members to take caution, as the Council could be considered responsible for anything that is and said at the meeting, and therefore, as in every meeting, strict compliance to the Code of Conduct is of the utmost importance. I would also like to make it clear that this Council does not accept responsibility for anything said by any external participants during the public participation section of the evening's meeting. Thank you. On to item 1, apologies for absence.
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. And item number 2 is the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. We have an, yeah, thank you very much. Do we have a second? Councillor Ripton and everyone for? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers. Brings on to item number 3, public participation. You'll each have 3 minutes, and I think we've got running order of Mr. Williamson, Sarah Dines, and
thank you very much, everyone.
We've got second, third lady. Mrs. Sylvia Jones, then in third, please. And Councillor Murphy. Apologies. Have we got a timer, please? Thank you, Mr. Williamson.
Yeah. As always, the focus of the Hasker Farm Committee as complainants is to address the process and practices that gave rise to a deeply unfair and damaging situation. The process and accepted practice predict the future, and the current administration must actively change both to have a hope of serving our families and society in a way to which they aspire. On review of the redacted report released February 8th and checking it in detail against the complaint, we found it to be a good start, but limited by the initial terms of reference as included for a stage 2 review. So we can't call it an investigation, and nobody should. We were clearly informed in our meeting with the independent reviewers that they would only conduct a prima facie review limited exclusively to the material in our complaint and with no power to investigate. Now, it's simply not
we were clearly informed in our meeting with the
fact-finding investigation if you don't plan to look at all the evidence or to interview all of the witnesses and in the right order. Nevertheless, the review did confirm a number of key points, and the Council has taken them to heart. However, we found many well-documented questions that were not addressed in the review. They were either ignored, dismissed without explanation or justification, or defined in a way so limited as to be meaningless. We don't have time to cover them all in a few minutes. So, in summary, the result is fundamentally flawed and procedurally unfair. So we must move to the next stage. But we do invite the Council to continue in a positive way and, if they wish, engage in a do-over with the correct level of interviews, fact-finding and justification. By taking this brave step, the Council can avoid walking itself into severe legal and reputational jeopardy. I want to remind everyone that officers have a duty to present viable and thoroughly validated solutions to the councillors for consideration and approval. Anyone should be able to come forward with solutions to problems, regardless of their background. Your process must ensure that their ideas are treated fairly, scrutinised, challenges overcome and then brought forward as trusted recommendations. When a proposal can't be made to work, disengage respectfully, don't lead people on. So now it's time to rebuild trust and respect among all parties tonight. It will require change, and you know what you need to do next. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Williamson. Could I have Sarah Dines, if I could, please? Thank you.
you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to say a few words at this meeting. In so doing, I speak in support of a number of constituents who have contacted me over the past year to share their concerns with regard to the Hasker Farm scandal as it has unfolded. We now have had the East Midlands Council's report of their investigation into this scandal. The findings at this stage are already damning, and there's clearly more to come. Nevertheless, rather than accept the fact that very senior officers of this council have behaved in an appalling and unprofessional manner, all I have seen is attempts by the council to downplay the findings. The East Midlands Council's investigation found a lack of transparency and good governance at the council, and the senior council officers had spent 8 months in commercial discussions, negotiations with a thrice-convicted drug dealer subject to a proceeds of crime confiscation order, while aware of his convictions and the involvement in organised crime, without proper records being kept. These officers included the Director of Regulatory Services, Tim Braun, and the Director of Housing, Rob Coggins. It is also clear that the Council's Director of Corporate and Customer Services was also aware of what was going on. There were others. This is the tip of the iceberg. Any attempts by the Council to downplay the seriousness of the scandal will rebound on officers and those elected members of Council. There is no real difference between partially upheld or upheld complaints. You cannot be a little bit pregnant. Elected members should remember what Dennis Healey said, the first law of politics: when you're in a hole, stop digging. Really, things need to come clean. I do welcome this report, but it is, of course, only a start. There are very obvious flaws in the investigation. Not all witnesses were spoken to, the ward councillor, the complainants were interviewed last, grossly unfair and against natural justice. The investigators couldn't possibly put the complainant's full report to the witnesses if they were at the end. This is a fatal procedural flaw. I myself, invited to give evidence as to fact, as to what I'd been told about the situation, was denied that opportunity. This itself is an inadequate position to be in. There is also inadequate summaries or clear analysis of the evidence that was given. Whilst the investigators dismissed the complainant's concerns that officers had entered into a commercial relationship with a convicted criminal, they failed to investigate or take notice of the fact this criminal had a history of it having had legal commercial dealings with the council dating back to at least 2005, if not earlier. This is the time today to sort out structural problems with this report. They will need to finish their work. The leadership of the council need to act fast. Otherwise, they damage the reputation of the many good people that work at this council. It's time to come clean. The matter needs to be further investigated. And frankly, I, for one, expect proper resignations of those senior officers who have misled my constituents and me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dermot Murphy, if I could please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Right. I, like many others who have recently contacted me, are disappointed that the Hasker Farm independent report is not being held at the full council, where all councillors would have an opportunity to share their views and question the detail. I know there will be a policy or a rule quoted that will say complaints are heard only at this committee. Hasker Farm is an extraordinary case and needs the full attention and understanding of all the council to make sure events like this do not happen again. The reputational damage to Derbyshire Dales District Council is truly unacceptable. In my view, the investigation did not interview all the people who raised concerns about what was happening at Hasker Farm. It was the individual who was negotiating with the officers who first broke the news about what was planned and the money he was going to receive from Derbyshire Dales. That is when I was able to get involved and support and help the members of the Hasker Farm community. Without this, we would not have been aware until it was possibly too late. The strenuous efforts to question the officers and share with them the unsuitability of the site and the history of the individual they were dealing with were slowly dealt with. Sadly, the evidence and responses from the officers pointed to this project being fast-tracked to a full council meeting for approval. The officers agreed to have a workshop for all the councillors to be briefed on the plans for Hasker Farm. The briefing packs provided by the Hasker community were extremely useful. On the morning of the workshop, I and one other had a telephone call telling us whatever happens at the workshop, the Hasker Farm proposals are going to a full council meeting for consideration. I was very angry at this prejudgment of the outcome of the meeting that evening. The good news was that the officers obviously did listen to the councillors at the briefing and withdrew their proposals. Surprise and disappointment would describe the feeling of the room that night. I do not have any confidence in the results of this inquiry due to its limited scope. The only way Derbyshire Dales District Council can rebuild public confidence is for all involved in the case to be interviewed and the true findings made public. And only then will we start to improve our standing as a well-run district council. The Hasker Farm case must, in my view, go to the Ombudsman for further investigation and scrutiny. Unless we do, there will continue to be a black cloud hanging over the authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And could I have Miss Sylvia Jones, please? Right, if you just tell me when you're ready. If you press the button on as well there, just so we can say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Sylvia Jones. I'm a director of the Rockside Estate just up the hill here. And my comments are much more mundane than the previous ones, but nevertheless just as important. It's about what I consider to be the substandard service we're getting from the garden waste collection service. We pay hundreds of pounds a year for this service, and we've had a very, very poor collection service this year. Between 6 and 8 times our bins have failed to be emptied. We've made a variety of complaints, and they eventually come back and do empty them. But it's really, I think that for people like us who received a very poor service, we should actually get a rebate. I assume from looking at the agenda that you're going to be considering increasing the fees for garden waste. Well, it is just not good enough as it is now, and you should not be increasing the cost for a substandard service. It's really poor, and until you can actually get the current service running properly, you shouldn't be imposing extra charges on the people like us. And my other comment is on the conduct of the men themselves who come to empty the bins. I don't know what arrangements are made for their personal toilet arrangements, but using our bin stores as a public convenience should not be included in that. We've watched this happen on a couple of occasions. For all we know, they do it all the time. It just so happens that occasionally some of us are looking out of our windows when they're emptying the bins. We've made complaints both times. Earlier in the summer, one of my neighbours spotted it, and we made a formal complaint and were assured this would never happen again. But lo and behold, a few months later, it happened again. And it happened to be me who was having a cup of coffee and looking out of my window, because we have, obviously we can see what's happening inside the bin stores. And I saw one man go in there and relieve himself. He came out adjusting his clothes, and when I was just about to open the window to shout down, blow me if another one didn't go in and do exactly the same thing in the same place. It may seem amusing, but in the hot weather, it's extremely hygienic for a start. Now, until you can get your service running, I would like to emphasize that if you are going to charge more, give us, who don't get a very good service, a rebate, because it's just not good enough the way it is.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, everyone, for speaking there. Can I move on to item number 4? If I may, please, which is just any interest to declare?
Chair, could I declare an officer interest, please, in respect of item 12 on the agenda as a former employee of the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny?
Thank you. Could I also move a motion to move slightly around the lineup for tonight, so we can have the audit up front and also the complaint review, so items 8, 9 and 10 with our auditor, and then have number 12, which is the item of the complainant, brought up further up the running order. Is everybody okay with that? Does anyone support that? Thank you. Right. Thank you, everyone. Right, in which case, on to item 5, questions from the pursuant. Overall procedure, I believe we have several questions. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, following the recent investigation into a complaint made to Derbyshire Dales District Council, what is the District Council going to do with regards to improving itself, and how is this to be done publicly? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. The item relating to the complaint and actions to be taken forward is on the agenda and today for the discussion and agreement amongst members. There are clear recommendations in the report in respect of an action plan to address where we as a council have fallen short, and a suggestion of a governance review as well as part of that. Thank you. I'm not sure, is anyone representing Councillor Hobson for the...
Would you like me to read that, Chair? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Yes.
Please,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you. My request to the leader, Councillor Steve Flitter, to have this report discussed openly and transparently at full council was denied. All councillors were informed that this matter would be discussed at an extraordinary meeting of this committee. This report has instead been discussed by 9 councillors tonight at item 12 on the packed agenda, following a lengthy statement from Derbyshire Dales District Council this weekend. Can you explain how Derbyshire Dales residents can have confidence in this process?
Thank you, Councillor. Council's constitution is a document agreed by members, and members have chosen to give responsibility for matters of governance and corporate complaints and HR to this committee and these 9 members. This is precisely the right place for a conversation on improving the council's governance. Councillor Hobson is accurate, or Councillor Bond in this case. It was the plan to call an extraordinary meeting to discuss the lessons learned from the complaint against the District Council. On reflection, it was better to bring the issues set out of the covering report to the attention of members sooner than that. The planned meeting of the committee has been in the calendar for many months, and it was reasonable to assume that all committee members would be able to attend this because of the notice given. Items that should have come to this meeting that were considered non-essential have been deferred to next month in a meeting to provide additional room on the agenda for this discussion, and that's something I asked for. As Chair, I was supportive of considering this report at this meeting. As mentioned previously, it was already fixed in the diary, and I was keen that it was considered at the most immediate session reasonably practicable. I felt that if it were to be considered during an extraordinary meeting, that this would be risked a further delay, which I don't think was appropriate to this. I think you'll agree. The public can take confidence from the Council proactively sharing a report into the investigation and covering note with members and the wider public via this agenda. Secondly, that we should be able to have a full conversation about moving forward as a Council in public. And thirdly, that subject to a decision members may wish to make, we have committed to returning the committee next month with an update on exploratory conversations that the Director of Corporate and Customer Services has had with the LGA. Thank you. In which case, can I then move on to item 8 then, please, for the External Auditor's Completion Report and Annual Report for financial year end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report asks members to approve and receive 2 reports from the External Auditor. These reports summarise the work undertaken by the Auditor and the key findings arising from his work in relation to the Authority's financial statements for year 22-23. Clearly, some time has passed since the end of that year, the 31st of March, in concluding the audit. The main reason for the delay was resourcing issues both in our own finance team and at Mazars, the auditors. In the report, I've mentioned that a delay in concluding an audit is not unusual. In fact, Derbyshire Dales is in a much better position this year than many other local authorities. Last week, the Minister for Local Government wrote to local authorities regarding the launch of consultation, which will bring about a raft of measures to clear the local audit backlog in England. The letter acknowledged that
A significant number of local audits in England are outstanding. The issues facing local audit are widely recognised as multifaceted and complex. Audits have become much more challenging, with firms responding to a changing regulatory environment. And in addition, pressures on the system were compounded during the COVID-19 pandemic and by an ageing workforce. And the consultation sets out measures that the Minister intends to take, subject to the consultation, to clear the historical backlog, first of all, and then after that, proposals for recovery for the 23-24 accounts and for future years. Alistair Newell from our external auditors, Mazars, is here this evening to present his 2 reports and take members' questions. But before I hand over to Alistair, I'd like to comment on the 3rd recommendation of the report, which concerns the audit fees. So the recommendation asks members to approve an increase in the scale fee of £17,500. The reasons for the fee increase are set out in paragraph 2.5 of the report, but essentially they relate to additional work that's arisen since the scale fees were set. And they weren't foreseen at the time that the fees were set. Some of these have arisen, members might recall it, last year, where I think the scale fee, we had to pay about £10,000 more than the scale fee. So we did take that into account when setting our budget. So while I'm asking members to agree the scale fee, we do have budget for some of it. So the amount of expenditure will exceed our budget by £6,844, not by the £17,500. Following approval by this committee, the fees will be subject to the approval of public sector audit appointments because they manage the contract for this work. So with the approval of the Chair, I'd like to now pass over to Alistair for him to take you through his reports.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Chair. So there are 2 appendices you'll see for my reports. If it's okay with the Chair and members, I will talk through Appendix 1 and then pause and take questions on the Appendix 1 report, and then I will move on to Appendix 2. There's quite a lot of information in both reports, and what I didn't want to do was go through both reports and then have a mishmash of questions jumping from one to the other, if that's okay. I take the reports as read, so I won't go through and do a detailed page turn, but there are some things that I think it's helpful to highlight. So Appendix 1 is our completion report on the audit of the financial statements for 22-23. That work is very nearly complete, and we have, as at today, 1 query which is outstanding relating to the accounting for pensions. That, in all likelihood, will need the council to go back to the actuary and get a response from that. For that query, I don't expect that is a lengthy or time-consuming process, and I have my hopes that we will be able to get that finished next week, latest the week after, in order to sign the audit report, which, as Karen said, is delayed from the statutory deadline of the end of November, but a lot further ahead of most councils, and councillors who are on other bodies will be aware of the challenges and the delays elsewhere. In terms of the items in the report, the things to highlight, I think, for members' attention is in section 3, we have had no changes to our audit approach from the expectations that we set out in our audit plan that we brought to the September meeting, I believe it was. We have, in section 4, set out our findings against the significant risk areas that our audit focused on. There's only one matter to highlight for members of any significance, and that is the accounting for pensions. While noting that work isn't finally fully complete yet, there is one adjustment that was processed through relating to the, as in the draft accounts, a pension asset, and in order to correctly account for the pensions in line with the auditing, the accounting standards and guidance therein, that adjustment has been made and there is now a small pension liability rather than a pension asset at the year end. The details are set out also in section 6, setting out the adjustments. And in section 5, we've raised 3 internal control recommendations to further strengthen the accounting and reporting close-down arrangements. All have been accepted by Karen and management, and we're aware of the progress that they're making in implementing those for the current 23-24 year. So I'll pause there, Chair. Happy to take questions on that report.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions from the floor? Thank you very much for that. Oh, sorry, David. Sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, I've got one. I'm going back to this pension liability. Reading this refers to perhaps the later report and the report on the accounts rather than to your statement. But I was going to ask a question about pension liabilities then, and it may be that it's appropriate to bring it up now, if that's all right with you. In the later ones, there is a big change in the amount accruing to the pension, or the asset value of the pension fund, which is effectively a result of an adjustment due to demographic changes, and it's a very large adjustment, amounting to £23 million. I was wondering if you could comment on that adjustment and what demographic changes have caused that. I noticed that the life expectancy of new pensioners has been reduced, but it's only been reduced by a few months, and I'm not sure whether that would have that effect or whether there is some other demographic change. And then you point to a liability, whereas in the 22-23 accounts there was a credit. The asset value of the pension fund was greater than the liability from that pension fund by some £3 million. So can you comment on that liability that is now arising in comparison with the £3 million benefit that was there before? Thank you.
I will do my best on both, and I might refer to Karen to help me out on some of those. So on the first point, which is commenting on the movement from year to year in the pensions from the previous year, the actuary is the expert who produces the information for the council. There are a number of, I'm not an actuary, but I'm aware of the number of assumptions that the actuary makes in order to arrive at the assessment of the assets and the liabilities. The most significant movement from year to year is not actually the demographic movements. They are significant, but not nearly as significant as the movements in the discount rate. And the movements in the discount rate, in the financial statements, there is a table which summarises the sensitivity of different assumptions to movements. And the discount rate is the one that makes the most significant difference on the value of your pension liabilities. And again, I'm no expert on discount rates because I'm an auditor, but the movement in the discount rate has been driven by the economics position in the country from year to year, and the movements in the markets and movements in various things. So that has driven the significant movement in your actuary's estimate of your pension liabilities from year to year.
Perhaps this is for Karen really then, because the statement in the accounts says it's to do with demographic movements. The changes in interest rates, I think, amount to some £5 million worth of change, but the change due to demographics is something is a lot more than that. So I think there is an issue there that I was unsure about really, how such a large change could occur from demographic changes.
Well, I'm not an actuary either, so I think to answer something as complicated as that, we would need to go back to the actuary. So if you want to let me have your question in an email, I can forward it to him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if we take that as an action,
yeah.
Thank you. Cheers.
And then if I can touch on the second question, can you just, I'm sorry, my memory's not as good. Can you just remind me of the second part of the question? Sorry, Karen's memory is better than mine. It's to do with the movement in the pension asset to a liability as a result of the audit. So you're absolutely right. In the draft accounts that came to committee, there was a pension asset of £3.something million as the actuary had assessed. We've carried out our audit procedures. One of those procedures was considering how the actuary had calculated that, and that identified that they had not correctly treated elements of that pension asset. So they had incorporated an element that should have been a separate liability and incorporated it into their initial calculation. That was incorrect. So that 3.8 million is actually should have been treated separately and netted off the pension asset, which has led to now the end position being the 400-odd thousand of pension liability.
Thank you very much for that. I'd just add, how do we fare in audits compared to other regions at all, or other districts?
In terms of completion or in terms of problems and issues?
In terms of completion and problems and issues as well. It'd be good to have both. Thank you.
So you are my only Derbyshire District Council, but I am aware of the progress and the issues at other Derbyshire councils and wider district councils in the Midlands and in the north of England, where my portfolio includes. There is no such thing as a league table, but would there be one, you would score highly on both. The progress of the audit, as I said, there are I don't know the precise number of audits that have been signed off, but it's not very many for 22/3. So you are ahead of the game in having your accounts signed off when they get there. In terms of the number of issues that we're reporting in this report, there are not that many. For a large council with complex issues like accounting for valuation of assets and pensions, these things are routinely reported by auditors as being problems. As you can see from the report and Karen's reference to the additional fee request for the audit, there are not a lot of issues that we have had to respond to and deal with in this audit. So you square up fairly well against others.
Thank you for that reassurance. Sorry, Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you're going to mention this later on, but you've mentioned within the report the Ernest Bailey Charity Fund, and there was some discussion on that. I wondered whether you could enlighten us at some stage what those discussions were and how it affects the report.
Yes, I may refer to Karen to pick up that in terms of the action that the council's taking forward. Yeah, the issue that arose through the audit was the closeness between the charity and the council. The charity doesn't have a bank account of its own right. It uses the council's bank account, so it can take advantage of the council's interest rate, having a much larger balance, and that benefits the charity. We've raised this as being a control issue because what that places is extra challenges on both the charity and the council to maintain that separation between the two organisations. There's no indication from the work we've done or the findings that we've raised that there is any impropriety or any challenge. But in our view, separating the arrangements out so that the charity has its own bank account or formally invests that money with the council under terms that the council and the charity can agree will be a much stronger governance position going forward.
Thank you. Any more questions? Or should we move on to Appendix 2, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So Appendix 2 it's a draft report. I wouldn't ordinarily suggest bringing a draft report to a committee, but I think there's benefit with the timing of the committee to bring this here. So this is our annual report, and we can only issue this when we've fully completed the audit. Clearly, because the financial statements isn't fully complete yet, we can't issue this as a final document. But the main element that's included in this report, and you'll see in the report in section 3, is the reporting of the value for money work that we've done. So that is the second of our responsibilities, to look at the arrangements that the council has in place and comment on those arrangements and be satisfied that the council has adequate arrangements in place. This is for the financial year 22-23, to remind members, so this is up to March 23, and the commentary that's included in this report summarises our findings from that work on the value for money arrangements. In summary, there are 3 criteria that the National Audit Office requires all auditors to focus their work on. That's financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy efficiency and effectiveness, the 3 E's as auditors know them as. We've not raised any points that are significant concerns in the terminology that the National Audit Office uses in its code of practice that we comply with. They are significant weaknesses that we would raise, and a significant weakness would lead to a significant recommendation for the council. We haven't identified any of those. We're concluding that we are satisfied that the council has adequate arrangements in place for that year. But we have raised 2 what are called other recommendations, which are, there are areas of weakness, but they are not so significant to warrant that formal reporting. But we've raised 2 other recommendations, one of which relates to the resourcing of internal audit work and to provide this committee and the council with the assurance around the control framework that having a fully resourced internal audit programme would provide. The report notes that the internal audit team is now fully staffed for 23-24, but it wasn't during 22-23, and the audit programme that they delivered was less than they had intended, as noted in your annual governance statement and in previous meetings here. And the second other recommendation relates to the formal reporting of the financial position and the financial monitoring through the year, and bringing those formal reports to members so that they are fully cited through the year on the progress that the council is making against its budget and its financial position. So that was all I wanted to say on that report, but again, happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
I'm used to stunned silence when I've presented these reports.
On this, go on. Sorry, go on then, Councillor Hughes.
We're aware that the problem of filling accountancy positions in the council is partly due, I think, possibly mainly due to the constraints on salaries in the public sector. Is there any comment that you would make about the differences in remuneration in the public sector and the private sector that might, and the impact that that has on the public sector? You work with a lot of public sector organisations. You must see this in a lot of different places. Thank you.
I think I will sidestep neatly the comparisons between the private and the public sector, but the comment I would make is that it is a nationally accepted challenge that the public sector finance profession, and I'll include the audit profession, has seen over the past few years, particularly since COVID, an increasingly challenging position to recruit and retain qualified accountants who have an experience of the public sector. That is something that Karen mentioned in her introduction, the publication of the consultation from the Department for Levelling Up Homes and Communities around solving the reporting and auditing challenges. One of the strands of work that DLUC is focusing on, along with the councils, the other interested parties like SIPFA, the National Audit Office and the auditing firms, is what is the long-term solution to this problem? How do we ensure that as a profession, public finance is properly resourced with the right people, with the right skills and experience, because that is the fundamental challenge to improving the position from this point on. So there is no easy solution. It is a nationally acknowledged problem. It is more acute at district councils because district councils don't have as much financial flexibility as larger councils, but it's not just a district council problem, it's throughout the sector.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Was there anything else to add from anyone? Do I have anyone to propose? Or please, if there's anyone out there who would like to.
Yeah, I propose we accept Officer recommendation. And in doing so, I'd like to thank Zars for the work that they've taken once again this year. Been very thorough, and also our own team under Karen's supervision, that yet again there are no significant findings to worry us as councillors. And what the financial team have done is keep this council on the straight and narrow through many years. And we're very proud of the company that we keep within the financial team. So thank you, Karen, and thank you to your team.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter. David.
Chair, I'd like to second that and echo what Councillor Flitter says. I think Mazars has done as well over the period when they've been working as our accountants. And again, Karen's team does an excellent job year in, year out, despite shortages of staff, which I know has put a lot of pressure onto Karen herself, but also other members of the team. So we really, I think I would be speaking for everybody to say how much we appreciate your excellent work, Karen. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Can I have a vote, please? Everybody for? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. We go on to item 9, the letter of representation 22-23, please. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is asking the committee to endorse the letter of representation for signature. I'm asking for an endorsement because it's one of my personal responsibilities as the Council's Section 151 officer to actually sign the letter. But the letter provides evidence that the Council's management acknowledges its responsibilities for the financial statements and for the true and fair representation. So it's only right that I ask you as members to endorse it. The letter does state that I've fulfilled my responsibility to provide the external auditor with all relevant information. As you heard from Alistair, there is one outstanding issue from the audit relating to pensions. So while normally I would sign the letter immediately after the committee's endorsement, I won't be able to do that tonight because I can't sign the letter to say I've given all the information until I've actually done so. So I don't expect it to change the content of the letter. It's just a matter of the timing for when I sign it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any questions? No, thank you very much. Can I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lees. And can I have everyone for, please? That's unanimous again, please. Thank you. And can we move on to item 10, the statement of accounts for 22-23. Once again, thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you. So this is the last of the 3 reports dealing with the statement of accounts. And in this report, I'm asking members to approve the statement of accounts itself for 22-23. The accounts have been prepared to comply with proper practices as required by the Accounts and Audit Regulations. And to help members have some assurance about that, we've produced an aid memoir shown at Appendix 1 that sets out some sort of frequently asked questions to help you understand the processes we've been through. The report describes the adjusted and unadjusted misstatements that were found during the audit and the disclosure amendments and the responsive management. So I'm pleased to say that the overall financial position in the statement of accounts is the same as the provisional outturn that I reported to members at the July Council meeting. From that, you can appreciate that the findings of the auditor didn't actually make a difference to the Council's underspend at the year end on the revenue account. So after members have hopefully approved the statement of accounts and Alistair's completed his work, the audit opinion will be incorporated into the accounts and we'll then publish them on the council's website along with the audit certificate when it's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for making the adjustment as well. Much appreciated for clarity. Do anybody have any questions at all, please? No? We're all happy with the statement of accounts? Do I have a proposer at all?
Yeah, I'll move this, and just to say that it's a very thorough report. It's good bedtime reading. Soon fell asleep reading this, but it is factual, it is good, it is professional, and I'd like to move it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Hughes.
So I'd like to second this. I agree with Councillor Flitter again. The level of detail in here is very substantial, and it allowed me to ask the sorts of questions I asked earlier on, which is great because that's what accounts should do. They should allow you to see what's going on inside an organisation. It presents a lot of the numbers, say, in different ways. So you can see them tabulated in a lot of different ways. You can see them by service and by other things. So it's a very useful document to keep tabs on what is going on in the council, and I commend them, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Can I have a vote? Who's for, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and we'll move on to item 12 then, if I may please, for the complaint against the District Council, lessons learnt and moving forwards. Can I pass to you?
Thank you, Chair. And again, just restating my Office of Personal Interest in respect of my former employment at the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. We're here tonight really in quite unusual circumstances, in that I'm bringing forward a report and an action plan in which to learn from a complaint that was received by the District Council. Just to confirm to members, as is our usual practice, the outcomes of any Stage 2 investigation are reported to the complainant, which we have done. We've thanked them for contacting us and sharing concerns. We've apologised for any mistakes made and provided them with assurance that we will act upon those learning points, and tonight is part of that assurance. The nature of the complaint and the findings of the external investigator I felt were significant enough to prepare a plan for the committee to consider, alongside a recommendation in which to undertake a review of the Council's governance arrangements. There's been a question asked this evening, Chair, about the Council learning publicly, and this is all part of that. Members will have reviewed the investigation report, and just to summarise amongst that, to note that of the 10 allegations, there were 4 that were partially upheld and that the rest were not upheld. And I'll quote directly-ish with your permission, Chair, from the report, that whilst we have not fully upheld any of the allegations, we've highlighted areas where the Council fell short, and part of the plan that's in front of members this evening is about learning and improving from that ability that we have tonight. So the areas that the external investigators felt that the Council fell short were around decision making and in what circumstances decisions are being made, around errors of judgment that took place as a result of pressure on officers by the Council's political leadership, that there was a lack of record keeping at meetings, and that was particularly significant involving those third parties, and in matters relating to planning enforcement as well. There were other wider matters identified in the report which drew attention quite sharply to the long-standing issue of this Council failing to meet its legal homelessness duties in respect of our traveller community. The need to maintain professional email communications and the need to strengthen our engagement with our local MP, Sarah Dines. Members will see that there is an action plan within the report that I've built, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with members this evening about whether those actions are the right ones, whether it goes far enough, whether we need to do even more. And I'll leave it there, Chair, to allow members time to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm opening the floor to questions, if I could, please. Any questions from the floor? No? Oh, Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you for this report, Alan, but I would still like to see this report go further publicly rather than just within this meeting, basically. I think the public deserve better than what we've done for them, so I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Do you want to respond?
Thank you for that, Councillor. I think that obviously it's important to say that we are obviously in a meeting held in public here this evening. I think the Council has gone quite some distance in publishing material to provide, to provide the committee, provide members, and ultimately the public with some assurance that we are wanting to improve from this complaint. And me and my team are committed to driving through those improvements to be made. But I welcome further conversations, Councillor Lees, around how we can go further.
Thank you. Any response, Councillor Lees?
No, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, Chair. I think, Helen, you've already answered this question by putting forward the proposals, but I had a question this afternoon from an Ashbourne resident about how we ensure that the lack of transparency that was shown in the way we approached Hasker Farm will not be repeated. And I noticed the action plan has a number of different areas which is addressing that. Just for the record, and would you be able to point to the specific elements that will help in ensuring that transparency is maintained in all cases?
Of course. I mean, the Council's process for arriving at those decisions is identified in the investigators' report. So that should be the process that is followed. One of the key areas that did come out of the investigators' report is around the current scheme of delegation on decisions on traveller sites themselves. I think the word curious was used, or unique, around the delegation still being held with council. And one of the actions that I'm wanting to work up is to undertake an options appraisal on moving that delegation elsewhere. Obviously, that will need to be undertaken by council. It's currently a council function, so any changes to that delegation would need to be agreed by council themselves. But certainly an options appraisal to look at the different options as to where that delegation should sit should be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just really a sort of a curious question, I suppose, about item 110 in the report, where you allude to the age of the committee system here at the District Council. I wasn't quite sure where the relevance of that came from. I notice it's not reflected in a particular action which is recommended either, given that 5.4 of the report actually, I think, suggests that, in fact, the organisation is stronger where this kind of scrutiny is not vested just in individuals, but the allusion here is that moving away from the committee system would be to concentrate decision-making in the hands of a smaller number of individuals, which doesn't seem to me necessarily to be the lesson that you draw from this inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor. That's really helpful. Thank you. I think it's really just to reflect on the councils and its arrangements and how long they've been in place. There's always an opportunity in which to review any structure in which the council makes its decisions, and it's healthy to do so. Many councils have moved around and moved in and out of different arrangements, hybrid arrangements and the like, in which to strengthen decision making. So it's purely there as a provocation to members, if you allow me to be so bold, to make sure that we're fit for the next 50 years at Derbyshire Dales. I think it's just important to keep on questioning how things have always worked, to try and establish whether we could do things better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from anyone? Councillor Buttle.
Thank you. In 1.11, we could be undertaking a review of our governance in one of two ways, internally or externally. I'm not too sure why we wouldn't want to do both. Could we not take advice from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny and then bring it to our constitutional working group and ask them to, bring it to a local context for us? And then we'll have good advice and then we can follow it. If that's okay, is that possible?
Very much so, yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything more to add?
No, that's good.
No, thank you. Any other councillors?
Sorry, Chair, are we at the question phase or statement phase?
Still the question phase, so for debate.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have anything else to add? Debate phase? No? Councillor Buttle.
I have two questions. How much does this cost, the report? I'm just curious.
Is that this one or the external?
The external East Midlands Council's report.
Thank you.
Just bear with me one moment while my laptop wakes up. From
Thank you, officer.
The direct cost of the investigation was £4,969.56.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Buttle?
It does, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else from the floor? Do I have any proposers at all?
Yeah, we are in debate.
We are in debate, yes.
Right. Well, I think there are lessons to be learnt here, and we have to do it in the correct way. People know that back in May, this council changed in the way that it's administered in more ways than one. And all this happened in the last administration, and lots of things were said, and lots are being said which shouldn't be said, because it doesn't help the situation that this council or the complainants are in. There are ways of doing things without posting lots of information that is not completely true or looked at in a different way than what is of the written word. And I think we've got to come together and we've got to really take the bit and look at how we do things, which we've been doing since day one, because we did not agree how the process was led in the first place. Transparency and governance was one of my main topics when we took over in May, and that's what I aim to try to drive this council in, being open, honest and above board. And I think that a lot of these things, and I'll quote, are minor things, because not one has been fully upheld. I think that there are things in here that make sense and we should look at them in a measured way. But I'm looking at public confidence was used by our Councillor Murphy tonight, and what he said, and also a black cloud. That black cloud was held over the last administration. We are trying to build that public confidence. And to do that, we have to work together. And until things stop and people start working together, then we will not succeed in coming to a successful outcome. Because there may be an election looming, and that election is having an effect on this council. And I do not believe that blaming officers for things of which they may or may not have made an error of judgment in the past. We've got to look at the seriousness of that. And that's been looked at in the proper way. We've looked at it as leaders. We've looked at it as an external inquiry. And it may go further. I can't see this stopping. But we as a district council will do all we can to appease what the complainant has put forward, and we want to work together. It makes no sense to be on different sides. We must work together to get something on this. So I'm going to recommend that we work in the way that our officers are recommending, and hopefully that everybody will join us in that journey, because it's no good and it will not help for people to go in different ways. We have to work together, and that's what I'm hoping. But whether that is possible, because of the absolute destruction that has taken place in the last administration and continuing through other means, is not helpful whatsoever. And paths of rebuilding relationships is going to be a very difficult thing, and that's for the future. So I do move, Chair, the officer's recommendation, and hope that we do go into a new phase.
Thank you, Councillor Fitter. Councillor Hughes.
Chair, I'd like to second that. I'd just like to refer to something that Dermot Murphy said, and concerned me. He said he received a phone call on the morning of the workshop saying that whatever the outcome, it was going to full council. I didn't see that in the report, and I was quite honestly, sorry, say again? Okay, all right, thank you. So I think there are also lessons to be learnt about carrying on these investigations. So I fully accept the recommendations, and I think the actions that Helen Mitchell has put forward for us to move forward with will help in improving the transparency of the council. And the report on Hasker Farm and the consequences of that will help us establish transparency, because we'll be able to work on using those recommendations to improve transparency, which, as Councillor Flitter says, is one of the aims of this new administration. So, and then also we can learn how to do these assessments, complaint assessments. Yes, I think I fully agree that the complainant should have been interviewed first. So I think possibly the people who undertook the complaint also have lessons to learn about transparency and openness. So, but overall, with the taking into account, the recommendations that officers are making, I fully support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. I accept the recommendations of the report, Chair, and will support them. Just a few comments to make, please. There have clearly been failings by the council. I think that is both from officers and members, and that is clear in the report. And there is room for learning and growth, and that is also stated in the report. I refer to 1.9 on page 331, and I am going to read it, Chair, because I know everybody has read it, but I think it is very important. The governance of an organisation should be purposefully designed to enable it to deliver on its objectives and in a way that gathers confidence. And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about tonight, the undermining of confidence. This is especially important in a democratic environment, and to that end there is an opportunity in which to reflect on the council's arrangements its behaviour, its processes and its structures to enable it to be match fit for the future. And I think if we were to hold up a statement, I think that would be a really great aspiration going forward. I think if we were to do that, that would make this council a virtuous council, as opposed to many councils that I've seen in the past that are virtue signalling rather than virtuous. And I think that's a very important comment going forward from myself. I think the recommendations are reasonable based upon the report's findings. Whether the report goes far enough, I think, has already been alluded to. But I think also acting on those, it does say in the report that they will be acted upon, but it also says they will be further explored and governance will be in its governance and also will be reported to future committees. And I look forward to that, Chair, as a really important aspect going forward in this report. I think also, Chair, it's important for members to receive significant training on the nature of specific meetings and their decision-making or non-decision-making powers. And I think that is very important and comes across in the report. And I would reiterate that again. Sometimes members think that they have decision-making powers in particular arenas where that is not the case, and there are assumptions made. Maybe officers also took that forward as well from the kind of almost from the request of members. I don't know because I wasn't involved, but it certainly is an important aspect there. I think, Chair, that honesty going forward, truthfulness and transparency in communication and behaviour, and that does, I think there is, for me, Chair, one particular aspect as well. The outward-facing part of the organisation, things like emails are not inward-facing always. They are subject to scrutiny and freedom of access requests, and that all council officers should be fully aware of that, and training and learning should be taken from that the language used, the way in which emails are directed and so on. I know that's in the report and I welcome that going forward too, because it is important that this organisation does act appropriately, transparently, and that confidence is restored in the council. I think it can be, and I think it's just a matter of putting these things into practice going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I absolutely agree. We need to be on that journey with everyone. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Councillor Ripton.
Thank you. Again, I support the report and the findings, and I think I welcome the external consideration of the options for governance. Just to build on David's point or David's question, would it be normal for you guys to have a sort of post-implementation review with East Midlands councils and to in essence do a lessons learned that said if this happened again, this is how we would conduct a review and what we take forward?
I mean, it is our report, so they've done their job, they've done their investigation in the way that it was set out to be undertaken. So it is our report, and it's incumbent on us then to take those learning forwards, and as Councillor Lees quite rightly says, learn publicly. So in terms of lessons learned, I can of course share sort of spirit of the conversation that's taken place this evening with East Midlands councils for their information. But obviously there's a lot of richness that's come out of the conversation today that's important for us as well. So yeah, the learning will go both ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer. Anybody else? Or shall I put that to the vote? Oh, Councillor Lees.
Yeah, it was brought up earlier on about workshops, etc. And we did actually have a workshop a while back in the last term. If anybody can remember it that was here. And a decision was actually made at that workshop. Not all members were at that workshop, so we need to have confidence that these workshops are for fact-finding and information-finding, etc., not a decision-making meeting. And that one decision particularly was made at a workshop, which, in my opinion, shouldn't have been, because that conflicts on some of this material that's in this report tonight.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Shelley.
Go on, Councillor Shelley first.
Thank you, yes. I mean, listening to everything that's been said by members tonight. I don't disagree with a word that's been said. Thank you for your very positive contributions from across the floor as well. There's clearly things that need to be learnt from this. I've read now through both the officer report tonight, the report it's based on, and the complaint that was circulated to us last year. There are some things that still don't tie up to me, but I urge the people who are most concerned with this to stick with the process that we have, which is, if you're not happy with the report that there has been so far, then there is clearly another route which can be taken, which is to go to the local government ombudsman. I would really desist from drawing conclusions at this stage, which is what some people seem to be doing, not in this chamber around this table, but outside of here, because it has the corrosive effect on the operation of the council. It has a disruptive effect, and you do have to think that our officers, who we hold trust and faith in, and as a new administration, we want to continue doing that. They need to know that we are there for them as well. It's not an easy job being a senior local government officer at the moment, particularly with the kind of pressures, financial as well as public, which you come under. And I would really hope that one of the lessons from this is that outside of this chamber as well, people can understand that in order to get the best out of their local district council, it's necessary to follow procedures, not to grandstand, and to ensure that relationships are built in the future which are going to be long-lasting and work for all of the residents of Derbyshire Dales.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Councillor Peacock.
I was just going to say something quite similar, actually. I wanted to say that the important thing is transparency, and I think, and I can see that there were potentially some limitations to the report, but I'm really pleased with the action plan. I think that's the right direction to be moving in, and I think there's a danger that if we spend too much time hashing over things that no longer have an effect, that potentially affects transparency in future. I mean, certainly if we start expecting resignations or anything like that, that doesn't encourage people to be transparent. And that's the important thing. And I think this is a good action plan. Can I just check, though, but I presume that the progress reports from this action plan are going to come back to this committee?
Yeah.
More than happy to, if that's what the committee wish.
Please. So, do you have any more, Councillor Peacock? Thank you. Councillor Buttle.
Well, I just really wanted to say that I was feeling quite apologetic to our officers. I think we kind of let them down. I was here in that last meeting where we stood around and we chewed over the stuff, and then we said, yeah, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And we didn't have a list of people. We weren't really taking it as seriously as we should have done. And I welcome this complaint because it's made me stop and think about the way we were behaving and the fact that we need to be less complacent and we need to tighten up our operation and just do a better job. So thanks very much. I'm sorry we've got to this point, and I think we do owe the officers an apology for the fact we didn't actually give them the mandate to get on with their lives and their work the way they should have done. And it's down to us.
Thank you, Councillor Buttle. Anyone else? Yeah. Could I put it to the vote then, please, if I may? Oh, okay. Councillor Flitter, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Councillor Shelley just stole my thunder a little bit there, and wisely so, because I think the two members opposite have taken this on very seriously. They've been very positive. I agree with the emails, because an email doesn't set the scene. Often it's a shortened version of a letter which you don't get the feeling of the emphasis of what you're trying to write. And it does need a professional look on that. But even to get too professional, then it dissuades a lot of people. But I do take on board the positive outlook that Councillor Bond in particular has taken over this and other issues with this council. And Councillor Lees, I totally agree about what happened in the past. It's something that we need to put in the past and we need to move forward. One thing that just did worry me a little bit is everybody expects this was a complaint to the council, and we don't have a level of complaints, which means that we can deal with things differently to other complaints. Every complaint is taken seriously by this council, and it is welcomed. You're right, because when we get to complaint, it means that we start thinking again about how we go forward and we rectify that. So yes, we do welcome the complaints, but on the same time, they are equal complaints with equal importance. And if we go away from that thought and treat things differently because certain circumstances are different, then we will land ourselves in trouble. So every complaint is serious. Every complaint will be dealt with in the same way. And our constitution tells us in how we should deal with that. And if members feel that they want to operate differently, then when it comes to changes in the constitution on an annual basis, that's where we look at it as a council. And I agree that we are resolute on this council to stand by our officers. And it's got to be remembered that in this council, the councillors will set the tone of who works at this council, what action is to be taken, not outside sources. We are in control of this council. Every 34 councillors, and we will work together and we will work resolutely in protecting our officers and from outside interference. So that's where we are. I thank you for everybody's contribution, and we will take it forward in the proper manner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter. Could I then put it to the vote then, please? Everybody for the... And against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. We got that recorded. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And can we move on to item 11, Derbyshire Dales Corporate Plan and Working Groups? Please. Thank you. Sorry? Oh, apologies. Apologies. No, I was going down my list. Apologies, everybody. We're going back to the... we've done the Treasury. We've done the Treasury Management Report, number 6. Apologies, Karen, keeping you on the edge of your seat there. Yeah. Can I go to Treasury Management mid-year report then, please? 23-24. Thank you very much, Karen. Away to you.
Thank you. So this report shows whether key Treasury management activities during the first half of 2023-24 actually complied with the Treasury Management Strategy that was approved by members in March 2023. The report provides members with details of the external context, such as inflation, the economic situation, bank base rates, etc., which do influence Treasury performance. Parts 5 to 9 of the report summarise the key Treasury management activities for the half year and the balances at the 30th of September. And Part 10 of the report shows whether activities during the period complied with the Treasury Management Strategy. I'm pleased to say that the report demonstrates full compliance with the strategy. So the report recommendation is that it be received and approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions from the floor? No? Is this part, can I just ask, is this part of the audit update that we're doing? Because obviously I think one of the audit outputs was that we do more reporting to members. Is this part ticks that box in the Appendix 2?
I think what the auditor was referring to was regular reporting of the financial position of the actual expenditure and income compared to budget expenditure and income. We have, so the auditor highlighted that for 22-23. During that year, we did have a shortage of staff in the finance team, so we didn't report regularly on that. In 23-24, we've already reported once to council on Q1 and to this committee on Q1, to council on Q2, and we'll be reporting to this committee again at the next meeting on Q3. So we've now brought back that regular monitoring. The monitoring of the treasury management is part of the requirements of the Prudential Code. We have to report 3 times a year, once to set a strategy, this mid-year report, and another one at the end of the year.
Thank you, Karen, for clearing that for me. Any other questions? Do I have any? Thank you, Councillor Flitter. Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Can I just say again, I must admit, I did read this report from cover to cover, and I found it fascinating in the way that you have reviewed all the different tests of our treasury management, and the fact that we come out pretty good on all of them. Again, this just gives me even more confidence in that we're going in the right direction in terms of finance. And thank you very much, Karen.
If I can just give credit to the principal accountant and her assistant, they have put a lot more focus now onto managing treasury activities better and to making sure that we do comply.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I put that to the vote then? Number 4. That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, on to item number 7, fees and charges, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So this is a joint report for me, the Director of Regulatory Services, Director of Corporate and Customer Services, and Director of Community and Environmental Services. It seeks approval for the new fees and charges that will be effective from 1st of April. At the moment, you'll be aware, it was announced this week that the current rate of CPI inflation is 4%. However, I would point out that the cost of some council services have risen by more than that. Our usual practice is to inflate fees and charges for the coming year by slightly more than the current CPI, to pass on increased costs and to help us balance our budget. However, we do recognise that increases of that magnitude might not be acceptable to the public at these times of a cost of living crisis and could result in customer resistance. Therefore, service managers have used their knowledge of their particular services to set the proposed fees and charges. Some of the fees are proposed to be retained at the 23-24 levels, and some have increased by up to 10%, but the average increase is around 6 to 8%. And the key issues are highlighted in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Is there any questions from the floor on this one? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the overall service quality associated with the green waste collection in comparison with the specific problems faced at Rockside Hall.
Thank you, Chair. For me, I'm glad this has been brought up because it gives me an opportunity to mention to the Speaker earlier. I would like a few minutes after this report, Chair, if I may, just to get some further details from the resident. We have had some disruption, as members are aware, through the round optimisation work and at the beginning of the new contract with Serco. We did our best to pre-warn residents and members about the round optimisation work and put in mitigation measures. However, we did accept that there would be some instability and some disruption to services. In terms of collections, the service has improved. It's improved significantly, definitely since the beginning of the contract, where we experienced significant disruption, and the instability of the service following around optimisation is improving week on week, and we are aware of a small pocket of places that are still experiencing inconsistency with collections. I would like to get some further details, and I'll address that myself with the team tomorrow. Unless there's any other questions, Chair, I think that covers the point.
No, thank you. Councillor Shelley.
Just a brief one as well. And I'm sorry this is a detailed question, and I'm not necessarily expecting an answer immediately. But I know at a previous discussion I was having that the question of a rather sensitive question, really, of the charges that are imposed for interment in graves for under 16-year-olds was raised, and I think at that point there was a query, and I'd still like to know if there's an answer to this, about how often that actually occurs in the district, because it does seem perhaps an anomaly that whilst we're not charging for the interment of stillborn children or children who didn't survive to the age of a month, that we're still charging on this basis for children up to the age of 16.
Chair, point of information, I think there are three, if we follow the national average and corrected for various things like demographics, it works out at about 3 children a year fall into that category.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes, but I'll also ask Councillor Ash. Sorry, Officer Mills.
Thank you, Chair. In the last 5 years, we've had 3 internments of under 16s, without going into further detail for obvious reasons, Chair.
No, thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Any response?
Well, only that I would hope that, given that the financial issue here is not a great one, that the council would seriously consider wiping out that charge altogether.
I would support that, Chair. There are a number of local authorities that actually wipe that charge altogether, and should the recommendation come forward, I would be very much in favour of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we want to make an amendment at all?
Yes, if I can, please.
Yes. Do we have that amendment recorded at all, please?
Councillor Shelley, would you be able to confirm which of those charges that you're wishing to move to zero?
It's page 42, I think.
Is it B?
It is indeed B, yes, that's right, where it's currently proposed that the charge would be £141.
Okay, so just so members are clear on the proposal, that is to reduce the proposed charge from £141 to zero for the interment of the body of a child whose age at the time of death exceeded 1 month but did not exceed 16 years. Are members clear on that amendment? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the proposal, Councillor Shelley. Is there any other questions from the floor? Councillor Peacock.
I'm interested in the rationale behind some of the changes, some of the things that have risen and some of the things that haven't risen by quite as much. So, for example, on page 30, it says that the conference room at the Agricultural Business Centre hasn't been increased because it's been pointed out that this could help future bookings, which is fair enough. But I want to know, firstly, has there actually been an actual, forecast calculation stuff that we could look at on that? And secondly, the same sort of thing might apply, for example, to the, and this is an example, there are a few other things, but the one that leaps out at me is the garden waste, because as the council recognises, the take-up was higher than expected, but could, putting the price up, affect the take-up and therefore affect the overall. Do you see what I'm saying? Have those kind of calculations been done, is my question.
Chair, if I may, so in a sense, yes, they have. So what the team do is consider what else is available in and around the area. So the price is competitive, but not excessive in terms of the conference room, for example, and also another example could be market stall rents. We look at where our price point is in comparison to others. It is a commercial side of the authority, so we have to be aware of what other people are charging and what's affordable and what's not. The difference that I see with that and the garden waste is the garden waste collection service. That fee has increased in the main because of a change in disposal sites. So members might recall that we used to dispose of organic waste at Vital Earth in Ashbourne. Unfortunately, that site was closed due to a fire, and we have had to look at alternate disposal sites. We don't have any available in the Dales, so we have to travel down to Derby and south of the district. That's increased the travel time and mileage and the vehicles, which obviously includes fuel. By the makeup of the contract, the council is subject to cover the majority of those costs. That's the driver behind increasing the garden waste fees. It isn't profiteering, it's to cover the costs. If we don't increase the costs of the garden waste service, the council, under the new arrangements, because of the disposal sites, could find itself in a position to be at a loss for providing that service.
Okay, but if the increase in fee resulted in more people, having bonfires in their back garden instead, would that then put us in a difficult position? That's what I'm asking.
Well, just to take us back a few years, when we first discussed introducing the garden waste fee, there were concerns about increased fly tipping or increased fires in gardens because of a fee, and frankly that didn't happen. Not being flippant with that, obviously an increase will impact some people. Currently we have about 17,500 subscribers to that service. Our projections have been amended based on the fact that some people probably won't continue with that, so we reduce that down to 16,000 residents. Hopefully, people will continue to use it and understand when they look across other authorities that whilst it's not an insignificant fee, it's quite reasonable in comparison to other authorities. Ours is a 12-month service with the exception of 2 weeks at Christmas. Other neighbouring authorities offer 6 to 9 months. I was looking at the fees at Sheffield earlier today. They operate a service that runs from March to November, and that's in excess of £63 for a lesser service.
Thank you. Evan, in response.
Well, I don't have, that's okay, fair enough. But I do have another question. Is that okay? The other question is, what's the deal with the trade waste recycling sacks? Why is that on hold?
The trade waste recycling function is on hold, and it is something that we're working with the contractor to get up and running. It has been a feature of their contract provision that they've not fulfilled at this stage in its entirety.
Thank you. Any further response? Anything from anyone?
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, I'm very thankful that I do not have the issue that Mrs. Sylvia Jones has regarding the collection of green waste, and I've just heard, I think, that I've been assured that that item will be taken up and followed up with both the resident or residents going forward. Is that right?
It is, Chair. While we've been in the meeting, I've already emailed the contract manager about the situation. Really disappointed to hear about staff urinating in those areas. It's completely unacceptable, and I'll be picking that up myself. In terms of the missed collections, like I say, I would like a few minutes just to talk to the resident after this report, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Shelley.
Yeah, can I just clarify again? I think it is the case that the garden waste service at the moment, it's not covering its costs, is it, even with the price increase that we're proposing?
It will cover costs of providing the service, but at £56, it won't retain the revenue stream that we currently have. It will be running with less revenue. That's less surplus than we currently get from that garden waste service.
Okay, well, the inevitable follow-up question is, what is the surplus, please?
So if the, sorry, just bear with me, it's a bit slow. perhaps it's me. So currently, the garden waste subscription service, prior to the change and the impact of Vital Earth, the council would have received 190,000 in revenue from that service. And if members do approve the 56,000, it'll be 133,000. And whilst we could look at that as income, we need to appreciate that that goes some way to covering the costs of the service.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, going back to the green waste again. Yeah, I think we've all had problems with there's bin collections over the past, but I think at the moment, touch wood, I think our service has been excellent just lately. When you weigh up £56, just over £1 a week, I think most of us would struggle even going to the recycle centre with it for that. So I think it's a good value for money. So I'm all for it. In fact, I have two myself, so we're quite happy with it.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Councillor Fleeter.
Yeah, I've been through most of this and I'm quite happy with it and the amendment. But just looking through it, the very first item on public conveniences, I think it has to be noted that we're one of the cheapest for charging for public conveniences, especially when they're well maintained. I can't think of another place that I've been as a tourist that, you know, you can pay 20p. And I think it's a very good service. But my question really relates around to the working group. And I can't just remember, is the cost part of their remit of looking at what we do with charging for toilets? Because if we were to get a report back from the working group to say that we wanted to open more toilets, that would increase the costs. And there may be an argument for raising that a little bit. But when can that be done? And have we had that report back yet? Because I can't just remember.
Thank you, Chair. So the Public Toilets Working Group is considering a number of options, some that have been put forward by members. We are awaiting some site surveys to be returned. They should be back with us towards the end of this month, early next month. We've assessed a number of sites already. We are in the final stages of that review, hoping to bring it to members. I was hoping for April, but I think the reality is it'll probably be May, June time. It's quite a complex issue, as members know. There's been a lot to consider. We have had discussions around pricing and price points. Don't want to set any expectations because no decision has been made on that in terms of what recommendations are brought forward. What we want to do is consider the package first. So which toilets may be brought back in to use, what the cost of that is, how that could be possibly offset, could we charge in other areas before. I think it would be remiss of me to make any further comment at this stage, Chair, because I'm looking for a steer from the wider working group on what those recommendations are before I suggest anything in here, if that's okay.
Thank you.
The other point, Chair, that I just want to make is that we had a good discussion about whether the £56 was enough, whether we should go closer to the £60 mark. I understand that argument, but I think it has to be a step change. And to get to that, we don't want to do it in one fell swoop, where it will affect a lot of people that are suffering in other ways. So we are aware of what it costs to provide the service, and we must work towards that, but in stages.
Thank you, Councillor Fitter. Anything else? Anyone like to propose? Oh, sorry. Apologies, Karen. Oh, do we need to deal with the amendment first? Apologies. Can we conclude the amendment, please?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just to come in on that. Yeah, I was going to recommend that whoever does move it, if the mood is with the room, to include the amendment in the other recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. So do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ripton, thank you. And can I have all those four? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. On to the next item of business, item 11, which I jumped to before, the Derbyshire Dales Corporate Plan Working Groups. Report updates members on progress made by the Corporate Plan Working Group.
Thank you, Chair. Short report for members to consider this evening. They'll recall a series of working groups that were politically equal were set up at Council back in December, in which to come up with some of the priority areas for this Council's corporate plan. The working group has met. There's just been a single meeting of that group, and the following areas of priority have come out of that discussion. So the first is around creation of a thriving local democracy. The second is around future workforce, future workplace. And the third is around sound financial management, which we've had an agenda full of talking about, Chairman. I just want to just sort of say that there's some deliverables within all of that, particularly in respect of in all of those areas, but plenty to do in terms of thriving local democracy in particular. I'm happy to take any questions, and Karen is still here as well on the sound financial management piece, but I will do my level best to answer any questions as well that relate to future workforce or future workplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? No?
Chair, my question really is about our process here, and that is, we've got the working group reports, but then at the next meeting of council, we're going to have the new corporate plan, and that will take the working group reports forward into the new corporate plan. So this is probably an event that's happened, and we're just remembering what has happened so we're really just noting this, are we not? So there's no consequence to receiving this report.
It's just part of good governance, Dave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I propose that we receive this.
Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Peacock. All those four, please.
Can I just make a comment? No, very quickly comment. It says in 2.2 that it's unhelpfully titled back office. Why do we do that? Why is it not the support team? Let's get it right first and put in the report as a support team.
I was always taught that everybody is frontline working in local government, so it is a very unhelpful phrase, back office, but in effect we are all frontline. We help each other out to deliver great services.
Thank you. All those four. That's unanimous decision. Thank you very much, everyone. On to item 13, the review of the whistleblowing policy. That's you again, I'm afraid. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. No, which is a good, bearing in mind some of the discussions we've had tonight on governance. I think this is a really good one.
Thank you, Chair. So members have got in front of them today the bit of a delayed updates to the Council's whistleblowing policy, or as its title is actually known, the confidential reporting scheme. This is just bringing the policy up to date for members to consider. Just to draw members' attention to the engagement and the consultation that's gone as part of the development of this policy. It's both been to the Council's joint consultative group, which is obviously with trade union colleagues present, and also the Council's employee group. They both had a good chew over it, and I got grilled quite extensively as part of that conversation, particularly within employee group. So I just wanted to provide that assurance to members that it has been to those colleagues. Really interesting discussions that took place in those meetings were about the confidentiality in which the Council's whistleblowing policy is rooted in, and people feeling confident to make a confidential disclosure or to blow the whistle that their concerns are taken seriously by the individuals that are identified in the report, which should receive those whistleblowers. So I hope this provides some assurance to members that these are really important policies that we need to keep up to date. I also just wanted to share with members that myself and Karen have been having conversations about how to draw attention to policies like this, where we need to really get them into the organisation and get people aware of them and how they can use them to best effect. So we've got some ideas in the planning around sort of an ethical fortnight in which to draw attention to some of the sort of myriad of policies that the council will have like this. And the anti-bribery policy is one, isn't it, as well, Karen, just to sort of bring it to life and to find engaging ways for staff to know that they are there, what their obligations are, but how they also keep them safe and well govern the organisation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. And it also, I think it'd be really excellent if we shared that with councillors as well. I think, to be honest with you, I think we could all share and learn from that, to be honest with you, in good governance. Any questions from the floor? Councillor Shelley.
Yes, thank you. It's a cracking report, and you know, in the light of earlier parts of this meeting where deficiencies in the way the council has operated in the past have been brought to light, you would hope that something like this would be precisely what's needed to ensure that colleagues who aren't necessarily feeling that they are empowered at the top of a structure have that ability to carry out effectively a sort of a form of public scrutiny. So it's very important. But my question really is, since the first version of this policy was adopted in 2007, I think, is that right? Do we have a record of how many times it's actually been called on by anyone?
I don't have those figures to hand, Councillor, and it's actually one of the areas that Karen and I have been speaking about, is around how we collect better data around whistleblowing, because it is a private and confidential process of which individuals within the policy are engaged with, but it's also how we learn as well from those whistleblowers themselves. So I'd like to go away and see if we can get that data for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ripton.
Yeah, just to build on that, I guess whistleblowing policy is a bit like car insurance, isn't it? We all have to have it, but we don't want to use it. But there are invariably lead indicators for some of these things that before you get to whistleblowing potentially indicate you have a problem. So to your point and to your point about data, do we have that, or is that something else that's being considered? So we have some early visibility.
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't catch your question, sorry.
The extent to which we have data on some of the lead indicators for some of these things that might prevent us ever having to use a whistleblowing policy.
Would you say that were things like where complaints have been made in the organisation, grievances, that kind of...
and yeah, exactly that sort of thing.
Yes, Deborah's not here anymore, but we will have key performance indicators around certain elements of HR processes, which again indicate whether there's a level of, a lack of health in the organisation. So we do collect that, and we do report that. I think. Again, Deborah's left, so I'm unable to give those kinds of answers. But we will collect that kind of information. I mean, I will just sort of share with members, because I think it's important to do this, to provide confidence for staff. This is not my sort of first time involved in whistleblowing. I have blown the whistle in another organisation previously, so I can completely understand how staff feel when they do something like this. It is pressing the, a fairly nuclear button. And I think it's important that as an organisation we've got a culture, and this came out very, very strongly from the employee group, that we have a culture where people can feel confident of being able to approach myself as monitoring officer, Karen, our external auditor, and others in the strictest confidence to discuss issues like this and for them to be taken seriously. So I think as part of that approach that Karen and I are working up at the moment around a sort of ethical fortnight will be to try and create that culture of trust and confidence that staff can come forward. They will be heard. This is the case of last resort. There are other opportunities within the overall system to raise concerns, but particularly when it comes to very, very serious offences like that you would see naturally within a whistleblowing policy, this council is open to hear from staff, to trust them and to take their concerns very, very seriously. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any further comment? Anyone else? Councillor Bond.
It's kind of a question, but not, Chair, really. I was just when I was reading through the report, I would have liked to seen the word integrity in a couple of places. I'm not asking for that to be done today as amendments or anything, but I think there is an issue around both the integrity of the institution, the organisation, and also whistleblowing does demonstrate the integrity of an individual who exposes wrongdoing within an organisation. It is that integrity which enables them in themselves as an intrinsic characteristic to come forward despite the potential backlash that can arise. That coming forward does exemplify integrity in my eyes and prioritises ethical principles over personal safety and or career development. And certainly I would like at some point I know in 5.2.3 there is a kind of acknowledgement of the risk, but I'd like that to be more evident, that we recognise that there is an acknowledgement of the risk that the person is taking by doing that, and that they, as an organisation of integrity, we also support those who come forward in that way. So I'm not asking for something to be changed, but maybe the next reiteration could include something around what is the intrinsic values of the organisation around integrity. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. That's excellent. Any response? No. No. I think maybe even part of the learning we could add that too as well. If
Sure.
we're doing those learning sessions as well, I think that's too remiss. Anybody else? Shall we do I have a proposal? Oh, Councillor Fletcher.
On brought a very important point up there, and I'm just wondering whether we can approve this tonight and accept that we look at those changes within that policy, build them in at the earliest stage. I wouldn't want to lose that and wait till it comes through in another 2 or 3 years. I think it needs including within our recommendation tonight that we do look at integrity and what it means.
I believe we can update the paper, can't we?
We definitely can, because we've got that as part of the recommendations to make any amendments. So that's absolutely fine. We're happy to accept that.
Thank you. Do I have a proposal? Or do you have any further questions, Councillor Shelley?
No, it's not a further question. I mean, it can be a proposal if you like. I mean, I was just going to comment on the very, very positive points again here, that this is part of a wider structure of features of an open and transparent council where people feel confident as members of staff that they want to work for it. And we all know these difficulties that we've got trying to hold on to really, really good people. It's not like we're trying to get rid of them. It's just that they find a reason to move elsewhere and indeed to fill the spaces that we've got. And that's uppermost in my mind at the moment. I think it's a real shame that the people who were perhaps in the public gallery earlier on aren't here to see and acknowledge the fact that we treat this matter in the round. It's not just a single investigation, but it's a whole series of active policies that are reviewed with the aim of making integrity something which is integral to the way the organisation works.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley.
That is a proposal.
Is that a proposal? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Rickman. Put it to the vote then, please. Everyone for, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And that's the end of our items this evening. Thank you very much. A tip of the hat to the upwards this year. And,
What we've just been speaking about.
You've got it, yeah.